My name is Anna Sale. I'm the host of Death, Sex, and Money, the show from WNYC about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. I am so glad to be here with you tonight. For those of you who listen to the podcast, you know that in the last year, I moved to California. It was just about a year ago that I left New York. This is what I looked like at the time. I was thrilled, you can tell. This is me now, where I live in Berkeley. This is my baby June. And many of you who listen to the podcast have followed me on that journey, and I'm so grateful for that. And we are actually celebrating 3 full years of making Death, Sex, and Money this week. It is our birthday this week. And Kevin Bacon is here to celebrate with us. Woo! So we're going to hang around after the show. The bar is going to stay open. There's going to be music. That's the Anthems of Change playlist that we built with Death, Sex, and Money listeners last year, with a few songs from the Bacon Brothers mixed in. The Bacon Brothers, of course, is Kevin Bacon's band with his brother. It's just one of the many things he has done in his creative career that started when he was 20 in Animal House. What a way to start, right? And since then, way too many movies to name, so I'm just gonna name some of my favorites. Mystic River, Frost Nixon, She's Having a Baby, Footloose, Friday the 13th, and one of my favorite things that he has ever done is his new TV show. We're gonna talk about it tonight, I Love Dick. Have you all seen the pilot for this show? Came out last summer. Kevin Bacon is more Kevin Bacon than you have ever seen him. And by that, I mean so sexy. And he's 58 years old. So we're going to talk about being a sex symbol at 58 years old. Also, what it's been like to live your entire life in the Hollywood spotlight while you're building a family and a long marriage with actress Kyra Sedgwick. We are also going to take some of your questions. So start thinking about what you need to know from Kevin Bacon. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Kevin Bacon. Welcome to Death, Sex, and Money.
Thanks for having me. How's everybody doing?
They seem psyched. Yeah. I want to start with I Love Dick. You play Dick.
It's always a good place to start.
Yes. You play Dick.
I do.
This artist in Marfa, Texas, who has this sexual magnetism that makes everyone in town want to sleep with you. And I just want to tell you where I was in my life when I watched this pilot. I was on maternity leave last summer when it came out on Amazon. My baby is sleeping next to me. I turn it up on my laptop, and I discover that my hormones are still there.
Cool.
Because there's this scene we're going to watch together. This is the last scene of the pilot. This is Kevin Bacon, shirtless, cowboy hat. He walks upon a pool, all by himself, mountains behind him in a field, and takes off the cowboy hat. Then the cowboy boot, and the other cowboy boot. And then the jeans. For podcast listeners, it's from behind. And then you just slowly take a dip all by yourself and wade into the water. And that's the last shot. And I know how I felt while I watched this scene. How did you feel while you were recording it?
You know, it was really a magical kind of moment. I seem to remember that it was one of the first things that we shot in the pilot. And for those of you that haven't been either to Marfa or to West Texas, it's, you know, kind of an amazing place. First off, you can tell by the landscape that it's big sky and high desert and beautiful, you know, just, you know, land stretching out so far and wide, as they said in Green Acres. Dating myself, you know, but it's also a place that has a tremendous amount of art and culture, even in this tiny little West Texas town. And we went there, and shot the pilot there. And that ranch, which is Dick's ranch house, I had spent the night about a month before just to kind of go to Marfa and feel what the vibe was there. And I remember waking up in the morning and looking out on this expanse of land and nature and sky, and you know, I'm not a spiritual person, but I think it was, if there's anything close to a spiritual place, this was that. So we had to get up at about, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning, because it was a morning shot. We wanted it to be you know, daybreak, and went out to the ranch in the pitch black. And this was a new crew, new people that I didn't know. And that was the very first shot of the day, was just to walk out and, you know, take my clothes off and get into that that thing. So it was kind of like there was something kind of amazing about that, because, I mean, you know, metaphorically, it's, you know, being an actor is you know, you want to sort of make yourself emotionally naked to the people that are going to watch something that you're doing. But also you're going to be, to a certain extent, emotionally naked to the crew that you're working with while you're doing the project. So to kind of kick that off, this was a perfect scene for us to shoot.
Icebreaker, as they say.
It was an icebreaker.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And did you feel like did you feel the gaze of the camera in a different way? I mean, in this show, you are this it's all about how you seduce people, and the camera gazes on you as a man, like it often does on women. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, because I mean, it's, you know, Jill Soloway, who created the show, has talked a lot about this idea of the female gaze and the fact that most art is created from a male gaze. And this is an all-female writers' room. Most of our directors were female. And a lot of, probably a way higher percentage of the crew were women. You know, I can't really 100% act that, you know what I mean? It's like I don't really feel like I can act. You can't come into a room, in my opinion, sexy. You can come into a room wanting something. You can come into a room being desirous of another person. You can walk into a room, you know, hungry or angry or fearful or irritated. There's a lot of other things that you can kind of play, but sort of trying to play sexy is not something that really works. I mean, however, that being said, I think that it's a story that needs to be told. So not just me, but everybody that's involved with it, especially when we're talking about her fantasy. This particular shot is not really from her point of view necessarily, because this is a private moment. I see this as a private moment of Dick's. This is a moment where he is all alone, and us as an audience is getting a glimpse at something that he does alone. There are scenes, very specific scenes in the show that are completely from her point of view. She's fantasizing about.
This is the lead female character who's married and just also just can't help but want to sleep with you.
Yeah. And in those scenes, everyone's job, whether it's camera, music, hair, makeup, wardrobe, is to try to create this, you know, kind of object of desire.
So there's been much said about Jill Soloway's sets and how she creates these really intense communities. You know, on Transparent, for example, actors on that show have talked about how being on that show has made them think about gender in different ways and sexuality in different ways. Have you found, working with Jill Soloway on I Love Dick, are you thinking about desire and monogamy in ways that you hadn't before?
No.
Okay.
No, I'd not. I mean, I love the experience, and I certainly had a fantastic, as an actor, it was a great place for me to go, because you know, I've done so much work that I'm sort of at a point where I'm very, very practical about my work. You know what I mean? I want to. I do my homework. I want to know what the day is. I don't want to, you know, fuck around and waste time. And you know what I mean? I want to come in and do my thing. And I had to kind of let a lot of that go because it was a very, very fluid sort of process. Not chaotic, but just kind of fluid. And my wife, who is often, gives me a lot of sage advice, said to me, you need to leave yourself open to the experiences. When sometimes I would come home and I'd be like, oh my God, it was batshit today. I mean, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And she's like, honey, you just need to leave. And
it's
I did.
Martha, man. Feel it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I really did. And I think I was kind of resistant of it. When it comes to my feelings about the things that you mentioned before,
monogamy and
desire, anything that has I live my life outside of my work to learn and to do and to experience these things. You know what I mean? I think you have to have some kind of separation where the biggest lessons that you're learning are from friends and family and not from colleagues necessarily. That's the way I do it. But
that's interesting because you have lived your whole life
on a set.
Yeah,
I know, it's true. I know, you're right. I mean, you're right about that. But and yet I think that kind of ability to make my work. It's not as important. Let's put it that way. It's not as important. The biggest lessons that I've learned, or the most intense experiences that I've had. I mean, somebody, you hear someone say, man, whatever, winning this Oscar is the greatest experience of my life, and I feel bad for that person, honestly. Not that I haven't won an Oscar, so by the way, I don't mean to jinx it because let me decide, all right, But I mean, when I hear that sort of thing, I think to myself, really, okay, you had a kid and that wasn't as good. I don't know,
So I want to ask you about those most important parts of your life. You have been married almost 30 years now. Mm-hmm. When you got married, do you remember what you expected marriage would be, and has it been what you thought it would be?
Do I remember what I expected? Wow, I don't know what we expected, honestly. I didn't have any kind of big plan, I don't think, I really didn't. I mean, I remember it being kind of certainly frightening and important, and in some ways, I remember it being like a big thing in my life, but it's not like I thought to myself, well, this is what it's going to be. And so has it been? I don't know. It's just been what it is. I don't even know how to answer that. It's just been us. It's been the two of us. It's a partnership that in this case works.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. It's funny because I got to tell you, especially now that it's been so many years, and when you add up those years, that every year we've been married, more people say, "How do you keep the like when we were married 2 years, nobody said, "How do you keep that marriage going?" But every year, every time I do an interview, that becomes up more and more, and I've literally gotten to the point where I say, that's a question that I just can't answer because. Especially in print, it's going to be a soundbite, and it's so disrespectful to the marriage to turn it into, well, it's because of whatever. I used to have a quote that I used, which was keep the fights clean and the sex dirty, and I thought it was a good quote. Yeah, it was a good quote. I used it for probably 10 years. Yeah. Right. And then it got to the point where people started going, now I know you said keep the fights clean and the sex dirty, but I want the real answer. And I was like, you know what? Fuck you. That's what I got. I don't know. I don't know. just feel like whenever I pick up something, an interview that I've done, or even well, these days, it's going to become just a clip, or a sound bite, and I see what it is that I say, I go, oh, that's just awful. It's just, I try not to try to give a good answer to that, which clearly I'm not.
Well, I hear you, like, to have been in your family and to have married and to have become a father, all while being quoted by, tabloid press and celebrity press. Like, of course you've learned to edit yourself over time about something that you're trying to protect.
Yeah.
When you became a father, you were already super famous.
Mm-hmm.
Footloose had happened.
Mm-hmm.
You had married in 88. Your first son is born in 89. What do you remember about what you wanted from your career as you were becoming a father, having had the experience of the huge mega hit and your life transformed?
Oh yeah, it was really bad, actually. It was a great kind of combination passage, because I I got married, we got pregnant on the honeymoon, we didn't know each other. I mean, we knew each other maybe, I don't know, 6 months or a year. I don't even. Yeah. I'm not so good on the timeline, but we hadn't really. It was, everything happened really quickly. I think right around the same time my mother was diagnosed with cancer. I felt like, from a career standpoint, that it was kind of a real low. Things that I thought were going to work just weren't working. I think that maybe. I think I was trying to think if I was either right before or right after I met Kyra. I was making She's Having a Baby, and I had really, really high hopes for that movie. I only think of it because you mentioned it, and having had a baby. Yeah, it went right in the toilet. I mean, nobody liked it, and I was like, this one's going to be the one, because John Hughes, he's like hitting them all out of the park, and it was the one where John Hughes, fantastic director, had so many hits. The critics finally went, nah, not this time, pal. You're done, Hollywood, and it was a very personal movie for John, so that was like a giant disappointment. I'm probably not getting all the timelines right, but it was a very, very difficult time for me, especially from a career standpoint. Well, and then it was exacerbated by the fact that, as in love as I was, and so thrilled and so excited about this beautiful wife and this beautiful pregnant woman and this child coming into my life, I was making a movie about underground worms. And yeah, and when we were doing a movie, Tremors, it's called Tremors. And we were up in Lone Pine, California. Kyra was 9 months pregnant, and we're out in the desert. Very much like it feels very much like Martha in a lot of ways when I think about it. Landscape-wise, that sort of like sweeping high desert, endless sunlight and cool at night and warm during the day. I mean, and we had this little house on a street in Marfa, Texas, and in the middle of the night, I would pick her up. I was a sleepwalker, and I would, scream, "We have to get out of here! They're coming for us! They're coming! Monsters and the whole thing!" And I would pick up she'd be like, "Honey, it's okay!" And I would literally try to walk her out into the street and get her out of the house. And she'd wake me up, and then we'd go back to bed. And really, like, was it about Tremors? Partly, but it was also kind of about. Just a lot of anxiety.
Tremors.
Yeah. I mean, about what was going to happen, in the future. So it was a interesting, confusing, but sort of fantastic passage.
What did you find that, like, when you think of when that passage ended and you started to feel grounded again? What was it?
Still waiting. I don't know. I mean, I think, I suppose that after that I went and she started working and we started working. And once our son Travis was born, now you gotta just, you gotta stop fucking around. I mean, you got a kid now. You got to just, really focus a lot on him and our lives and trying to provide. And she was ready to go out and work. And so we were doing a lot of traveling and a lot of living on the road with an infant and a dog and my wife and I. And we lived in city after city all over the country, packing everybody up and going. We were, the thing about us is that we have this like kind of super, what people would call a stable sort of existence because we've been married for so long, and there's that. But we really are vagabonds. We always have a suitcase packed. In a way, there's always a suitcase kind of sitting around somewhere because we know that we can't get too sort of stuck, and that means physically moving, but it also is like kind of like job to experience, and I think that that's one of the things that we kind of continue to do. And at that point in our lives, when our kids were very, very little, we were still really, really deeply in that. And you could look at it and go, well, what are you chasing, man? Or, well, what are you running from or whatever. But whatever we were running from it together.
Yeah, to have a teammate in that.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Powerful way to start a family.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're all moving through the world, even if we don't move apartments.
Right.
Or, life is coming at us in ways that we don't expect and don't always have stability.
I'm not sure I answered your question, but that was a...
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
So now your children are both performers.
They are, yeah.
So what, having had the experience you have had with Hollywood and seeing the sort of how it can affect your life, what do you tell them about how to protect the core of themselves as they start their careers?
Well, one of the things that's funny about, but one of the things that I did imagine, not so much about marriage, but about parenthood, was that there would be those moments when I was going to tell them something, but so far they haven't really come up. I mean, I keep thinking, in every movie that you see, there's like this like great thing is I remember my dad saying to me, and it's like, I don't know. It just seems like it doesn't. I don't know that we have those kinds of like specific discussions. I feel like once in a while, now that they're in their 20s, there will be something where we can give some kind of advice, but it really has to us been more about leading by example and wanting them to take their own path and their own road and being supportive of the things that they are doing and discovering and just being less of a we have a certain amount of rules about being honest and compassionate and a decent person, but like outside of that, there's not a lot of like rules. You know what I mean? Also, being able to support yourself and make your own money, that's another kind of thing that we've tried to teach them.
How did you teach them that?
They kind of sort of got it by osmosis. I mean, I don't know, just didn't give them the credit cards or whatever. I don't know. Just they my son they've both been working, since they were, pretty young, trying to do their own thing. So, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure. That's another thing. I'm not exactly sure how to teach that.
Did you tell them our money is not your money after a certain point?
No, never told them that. I don't think they ever felt like, we were going to kick them out on the street or something like that. But I think they also both have a very, very strong work ethic. Whatever. Both of their parents have been working since they were teenagers, and supporting themselves since they were teenagers. So, if that's what both your parents have been doing, then maybe that's what you're going to do. I mean, I think it's interesting because in my son's case, he's a musician, and there was a short time when he was probably about 13 where I could show him a little bit of stuff on the guitar, and then he got better than me by the time he was like 14. So I was like, okay, I guess I can't help you with that one. But we do have a language of music, which is really, really fun because we can talk about things, just about things sonically and gear wise, and also he's in bands, and it's an experience that I've had, being in bands, touring, record companies, all that kind of stuff is sort of fun to have that sort of connection. My daughter is an actress now, but for many years was really not pursuing it. And even though I cast her as a young girl in a movie that I directed, and she once went on to a show that Kyra was on called The Closer and did 4 episodes in a summer. We didn't really think that she was going to do that. And when she finally came to us and left school and said, "This is what I want to do," I said, "What happened to you don't want to do that? What happened to you saying that you felt that this was not something that you were interested in?" She said, "I said that because I thought that's what you wanted to hear." And I realized at that moment that for whatever reason, we had subconsciously supported the idea of music as a career, but not really supported the idea of acting as a career.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, it's almost like, there's an element of it that Kyra and I, as incredible as these careers have been for us, and we have so much gratitude to be able to work together. I mean, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but it's a lifetime of being told no, right? You most of what happens to you as an actor is you audition for things and you don't get them. Mostly it's people saying you're not this, you're not tall enough, you're not old enough, you're too young, you're too short, you're too fat, you're too thin, you're whatever, you're not right. I mean, just think about that as a statement. He's not right. He's just not right for this. She's just not right. It's a weird kind of like thing to want to toss your child into that lion pit. So I think that while we, as I said, have been always supportive of what they wanted to do, somehow she got the message that we were saying that. Now that she's doing it and enjoying it and working extremely hard at it, it's really nice to be able to actually share a little bit of experience. And what I always say to her is, listen, I'm not saying you got to do it this way because your process is going to be your process. That's the one thing you got to know, is that how whatever career you're in, your journey is going to be different than somebody else's journey. But this is what happened to me, and take it or leave it.
I want to ask a bit about your family growing up, because you're one of 6 kids. Mm-hmm. When you think about your family home as a little boy and what family was, what your picture of what family was from that vantage point, like what was your household like?
I grew up in a very, very thin, what we called a townhouse in the right smack dab in the center of Philadelphia. And when I say thin, it's because it was just only maybe 18 feet wide or something like that. So it felt in a strange way like a little house, but it was in a nice neighborhood. My father was a city planner in Philadelphia. So while he wasn't a wealthy man, he was a powerful man because he ran the planning commission for a really long time. He was a kind of a great kind of thinker. He thought all the time and would wake up every morning and have all these thoughts and ideas about cities. And cities were his life's blood. It's everything that he thought about and wanted to do and fix, specifically the city of Philadelphia. He was very, very instrumental in this idea during the 50s when you and 60s, I guess, when you had white flight and the suburbs and the that kind of American dream with a garage and a car. his whole life's work was to bring vitality back to the centers of cities, because he believed them, and believed in Paris and Rome and New York and Chicago and everywhere else. My mother was a teacher, a nursery school teacher, early childhood educator. My first experience in schools was in a housing project in Philadelphia that she had started a daycare in. And, rather than send me someplace else, that's where I went. She was the teacher. Like the rest of the kids didn't know that my mom was the teacher, but she was the teacher. And she spent a lot of her life working with young kids, and then eventually in prisons, starting daycare centers in prisons so that visiting families could spend time in a more nurturing kind of place with the prisoners. The youngest of 6 kids. They had 5 of my brothers and sisters, pretty close in age, and then 8 years later I was born. So my mother
Hello!
She gave me this whole rap, wrote me this long letter about how I wasn't a mistake one time, because I guess I had said it in an interview or something, and she read it, and she was horrified, and I was like, okay, nice letter, come on, let's tell the truth. Especially now that I'm a father of 2. When we got married, I was like, yeah, honey, we're going to have like 6, 7, we'll see how that goes, I had 2 kids, I was like, we're done. That's it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not a mistake, but to me, you have 5 kids, and then you wait 8 years, and then you have one more, which I'm not complaining about, by the way. I felt sort of like I was an only child with a very big family, because from a very young age, they were mostly out of the house. Plus, they were very, very independent. My parents, for whatever reason, nurtured a lot of independence. Maybe it was that they were pushing us away. Maybe it was that they were trusting that we were going to be okay. But everybody got out of the house by the time they were 16. So by the time I was 8, I was the only child.
I want to ask you about money.
Sure. You need something?
Always. Yes, please. I'm paying for childcare right now. So you were one of the people who lost money in the Bernie Madoff stuff, and as you're describing, kind of a part of your identity is that you've supported yourself since you were a teenager. Earning money, taking care of yourself, taking care of your family is important to you. What did it feel like in your body when you heard the news?
Yeah, that was a tough day. Yeah, look, if anybody. I've been robbed a bunch of times since I was a little kid. I used to get beaten up and my lunch money stolen. And I was robbed at gunpoint on the Upper West Side in the 80s, So somebody comes either into your pockets or into your house and takes something from you. It leaves you definitely with a sick kind of feeling. However, pretty quickly, we looked at each other because we were together, thankfully. I was really glad that we actually were in the same city at the same time. And we went, okay, let's, we got each other. Kids are cool. Everybody is healthy. Let's put the pieces back together. We're going to work, We got a nice apartment. And I think that you have to live your life trying to avoid bitterness. So, because that'll kill you, I'm sure it's killing him, So, I try to just move on. And actually, there was a lot of people. A whole lot of people in that case that most definitely were in a way worse situation than we were, way worse. So, it was what that's what it was.
Do you think about money differently, having gone through that?
I think that when you're an actor or any kind of sort of creative person, you often you feel like that's not what you should be focused on. Now, granted, we all have a different relationship with money, and it is a very, very complex thing. It's just as complex as death and sex. So I don't want to make generalizations about actors and artists in general, but oftentimes we put that off into a place where somebody else is going to have to worry about it because we're doing something that is above and beyond that and loftier than that. And I think that probably to a certain extent, I was kind of part of that. I've never really been very, very good at understanding money, and I it took me a long time to figure out how to even balance a checkbook. My parents were not very good at teaching us any kind of lessons about money. They just weren't. We didn't have a lot of money, but we never felt like we were going to be going hungry. We all went to public schools, but if you really needed something, there was some money there for it. It was a weird kind of message. It was never really like, here are the ins and outs of it. So if anything, it taught me that, you got a lot on your plate. You're going around, you're doing parts, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing interviews, and you're busy, and you're trying to raise your family, but let's put all these things in order. Along with that, you should have a little bit of an idea of what's going on with your money, and in that case, I think we just kind of, like many people, just sort of looked the other way and went, that's over there. It's working great. Look at all that interest coming in. I'm sure it's fine. I'm not going to kind of keep an eye on it. And let me also say that when the whole thing shook down, we did okay. I'm sure there's, like I said, there's a lot of people that did a lot worse than we did.
You were like 49 when that happened. You're turning 50. You're just. It's interesting to me that you're at that
I hate the
stage.
nines. I've always said that I just don't like nines, and I'm about to have a 9 next year. So I hope it's not a bad year because so far the 9s have not been good.
The 9s have not been good. I mean, for that to happen when you're 40, did you make different choices professionally because of that?
No, I don't think so. I'll tell you. Actually. Again, I'm not so good with the timeline, but I think The Cure was on The Closer at that time. And that was really, really, really helpful because that show, if she hadn't walked away, there's still a spin-off that's happening. I think it would still be on the air. And I think at one point, she was the highest paid woman on television. So,
Shout out to Kyra.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not feel too bad for the Bacons. I'm not trying to weave a sad tale of. I think that you, again, this is that thing. You gotta look at what's good in your life. You gotta look at what the positives are. But what are you gonna do? I can't. What am I do? Trying to, find the guy and say, you took my money. I'm punch him in the face. I mean, what am I gonna do?
And have you let go of the bitterness? Or
Yes.
Are you still trying? You have.
I have no bitterness about that at all. None.
How did you let go of that?
Again, I don't think about it. I just don't. I just don't think about it. When I think about it, when people ask me about it, that's the only time. I mean, literally, like I'm looking forward to this. De Niro's doing the movie. I can't wait. He's doing it on an HBO.
Yeah, there's a sign right out on the sidewalk out here, and I was like, oh my gosh.
I can't wait. I know. I was so. I really thought that HBO missed a golden opportunity, which was to cast Kyra as Ruth. But anyway, I'm sure. I'm sure Michelle Pfeiffer's going to be awesome. She's a fantastic actress. But and I saw Dreyfuss do it. He was great too.
What do you get from playing music that you don't get from acting?
I don't know. It's a funny thing with music because a lot of people sort of think that I use music as an escape from this horrible acting career. I mean, a lot of people have said, yeah, it must be great because you get a break from all that other stuff. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I mean, I love being an actor. I mean, I love the acting. You know what I mean? I still love it. Like the time between action and cut is still like a fantastic, great, fun place for me to live. But I guess, well, there's two things. One is that I also adore music, and I always have, and I started writing songs, I think, before I even took an acting class. I grew up, I never got comic books, I got 45s. My heroes, starting with my brother, were all people with guitars. I went to concerts. My best friend his dad was a rock and roll promoter. I just lived music. I mean, my parents weren't musical, but our house was a very kind of musical house. But when I actually picked up an instrument, I went, this shit is hard. I can't do it. So I said, well, let me do acting. That's a little easier. It didn't end up being easier, but
barrier to entry. Just,
yes, yeah, exactly. But I music was always kind of there, and my brother and I would keep writing songs. I think if you have songs or music that you want to share, it's kind of frustrating to only share them with a handful of people. You know what I mean? To like just play something just for your family and friends. Eventually, you want to either record it or just kind of put it out there. Especially when you're someone like me who is a performer, that's really what's at my essence. And so there's the sharing of the tunes, and I also think that it's a very, very personal way to share stuff. Like acting is really super deep for me and personal and naked, but when it comes to like really revealing something about myself personally, my song lyrics are way more intimate than any interview I've ever done, including this one. Present company exclusive. But
we'll get there, Kevin.
We'll
Just
get there.
wait.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it. Yeah. But you know what I mean. I feel like there's that, and then there's also just the experience of being live and sharing something with an audience for one night that is never going to be the same. It's like I started out doing theater. That's what I did. I was like a theater actor. Did play after play after play here down in the village, and knowing that night, standing backstage, getting butterflies, right? Butterflies. I don't feel butterflies on a movie set. Maybe in the first day a little bit, but movie set's like a comfortable place for me to live. It's like walking into my living room. But standing backstage, either to do a piece of theater or to play a gig, there's a little bit of butterflies, and I think that's something that's really good for a performer.
We're going to take some questions from the audience in just a minute. Collect your thoughts. I have 3 questions for you before we do that.
All right.
We often end our interviews on death, sex, and money with questions one about death, one about sex, one about money.
Okay.
So on death, has there been someone you've lost in your life that has left you with regrets? A death that you think that you wish something else would have happened?
Regrets. Yeah, there is. Actually, I had a really good friend who, he just couldn't keep him off of couldn't keep the monkey off his back, and I wish that that would have gone a different direction.
On sex, you're 58, almost 59. How do you think about sex in your 50s differently than you did in your 40s?
Differently than I did in my 40s. God, that seems like just yesterday, my 40s. I don't know if I think about it differently. I guess I feel like, honestly, I feel like it's become, in some ways, even more important to me right now. I almost feel like I'm trying to cram as much of it in before it's over for good. Does that sound weird? I don't know. That's kind of that's kind of like yeah.
That's what I Love Dick is picking up.
I guess, yeah. I mean, because I mean, I think that at a certain age, as a man, you're going to start looking down. I'm not someone that I'm not a fatalist kind of person, but obviously, you start looking at a lack of power, at some point, down the road, and for whatever reason, at this point, approaching 60, I'm fully committed.
And on money, do you expect to earn more money this year than you did last year?
Oh wow, I don't know about that. 2017 as opposed to well, I got to see if Dick gets picked up. I don't know. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I mean, look, I don't to be able to work at all as an actor, to be able to have any gainful employment or with any kind of, I mean, the gratitude that I feel and that we feel for what we have is boundless. And also, in terms of like money, this is sort of an answer to that question, which is that money on the page means nothing to me. People often, and this is probably also addresses what we were speaking about before about losing money. People talk about net worth, and I think that a lot of people really like to see a number grow on a page, and I don't care about that. I want whatever the money is going to afford in terms of like my family and my a nice place to live and being able to travel in a way that we want, being able to give it away or do good things with it, you know what I mean? But to actually see a number on a page is something that's never really been interesting to me. I will tell you one more thing about money, and that is that because I worked and really started out so much as a waiter and kind of like hand to mouth, I always keep, I shouldn't even say this, but I keep a lot of cash on me. Mm-hmm. So probably shouldn't say this. How much cash do I have? I probably don't even have that much right now.
Okay, let's see.
I probably
That's some bills.
I probably have like, I don't know. This is actually light.
Really?
Yeah.
And you just keep it in your pocket, folded up.
Yeah.
No wallet.
Mm-mm. No. I just, for some reason, I don't know. It's just a weird thing. Like I don't leave the house without. And I've often said it's because just in case of the zombie apocalypse, and I'm thinking to myself, how do I buy myself off the island of Manhattan? I just like literally have like the thing. You go down to the Hudson River, and there's one guy, and they're like throwing everybody away, and he's got one little blow up raft, and I'm like, hey buddy. And he's like, I don't need your cash. You're Kevin Bacon. Come on.
That was a good answer. Okay, so we're going to take some questions. We have microphones here and here. Who has a question for Kevin Bacon? Please come.
Hi, Anna. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
My name is Lippy Roy. I'm a doctor, and I oversee addiction treatment efforts at Rikers Island. And just earlier today, I gave one presentation on meditation to the nurses, followed by another presentation on the basics of addiction to social workers. And so I love movies and television, but I always tend to see things from the angle of kind of a doctor. And I'm wondering, Kevin, like one of the slides in my presentation is celebrities and overdose. So I talk about Heath Ledger, there's some Philip Seymour Hoffman, and just given the uncertainties of your profession, the rejection that you face, I'm just wondering how you really avoided that pitfall of substance use. I have my theory, but I'd like to hear your...
Well, first off, can we talk about your gig for a little while? I mean, come on.
Never a dull day.
Wow.
Never a dull day. And with the mayor's announcement of closure of records, people ask me, oh, Lippy, what are you going to do? I'm like, let me tell you something. The prospect of unemployment has never brought me more joy.
Wow.
Just like Kevin Bacon will always have a job, as a doctor, I'm always going to be able to find a job.
Oh my gosh, that's some job you got.
Second quick question. Will and Grace is one of my favorite shows. That episode where you guest starred and danced to Footloose with Eric McCormick. I gotta find out what that was like.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I love.
There was a lot in there. There was a lot.
I love this woman.
But I do that question. Like, how have you avoided the pitfall of substance abuse when your profession can be so perilous?
I don't know. I mean, I think, you're a doctor. You can tell me, is there a chemical aspect to that?
So there's a saying that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. I know the brain science behind it, but really it's... And so my theory, and you tell me if I'm wrong.
I'm going to go with it, whatever it is. Because I know you got it all going on.
I mean, honestly, I think we all have a lot to learn from you. Like, Anna asked you about this, but and I think you're very modest about it. Maybe you just really don't know what the answer is to this long-lasting marriage, which I think is not only atypical. I mean, it's really atypical in Hollywood life. I really do think so. I think the fact that you have a really long, loving marriage, you've got kids,
that helps.
You were raised well.
That's
I think
good.
it's... And we don't all come from good families, but if we have a community or a sense of community, I think that really helps. So
all those things help for sure. And I have to say that, I like to say that there is no secret to longevity. Longevity is a secret. If you hang in there for long enough, sooner or later people start to appreciate you, whether you're an actor or whatever else it is that you're doing. And one of the reasons that I think about that is because when I think about starting out, and a lot of the men and women that I've known and worked with through the years, I've seen a lot of them, kind of fall off the map. And there's been a lot of sad cases of not people that I was really super close to, and famous people and not famous people. I feel really, really grateful. I love life. I don't want to, if I felt like I was doing something that was really was threatening my existence, I think probably there would be some piece of me that would say, dude, you got to stop, or you got to get help, or you got to, do whatever you're going to do, So I wish I really had a better answer than that, but I admire you and the work that you're doing, and in terms of Will and Grace, those are like, talk about two extreme questions. I mean, on the spectrum, that's what you call the spectrum.
How I reduce my stress. I have a stressful job. I come home and I watch TV.
Oh, good. Yeah, I had a good time doing Will and Grace, playing the guy's stalker, and I don't know. They're having a reunion, I think. Yes, so they haven't called me.
Thank you, Libby. What's your question over here?
Well, now I feel my question is inadequate after that.
Yeah, now you got to say what you do for a living now.
I feel like there's nothing left to ask, but I'll give it a shot. I was wondering, of all the movies you've done, which is the one you've learned the most from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I feel like there's been a process of, I'm going to give you an example, just because I feel like I learn something every time I go to work. I think that when I was really, really young, I thought I knew everything there was to know, both about a career, about life, about acting. I was the cockiest, most unwilling to take advice or lessons or direction or in school. I mean, I didn't believe in any of it. As I've gotten older, I've realized how little I know and how much I have to, kind of keep myself open to making this life a learning process. But I remember going and doing Diner with Barry Levinson. It was his very first directing thing. And on that movie, this bunch of us thrown together, and Barry put us all together and wanted to do a lot of kind of improvising. And I was intimidated by the ability of a lot of the other guys in the show to improvise. And so I kind of tried to keep up with it, and then made a decision to hang back and to just be the guy that watches those guys do their thing. And what I learned, along with him once saying to me, the guy was supposed to be drunk. We kind of had this idea, or I had this idea that he was drunk for most of the movie, like during the day and at night. And, he was an alcoholic, the character, clearly, a young alcoholic. I was trying to telegraph what that drunk thing was. And Barry taught me the lesson of not telegraphing it, of just trying to just be it. And also that being in a scene and listening to what somebody is saying in that moment is just as powerful a choice in a screen situation as it is saying something or being sort of more kind of active. So that's what pops into my head, and I think that what you might have been asking is more about a philosophical approach to life. And as I said before, I really try to look at things outside of making the movies to learn the life lessons.
Yeah, I didn't have anything in mind, but you definitely answered my question, so thank you.
Cool.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
2 questions. My friend wants to know what's your favorite band.
Okay.
And my question is, you've done a lot of roles from one end of the spectrum to the other. How do you go home at the end of the day and shake off Ryan Hardy, for example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are good questions. I'll start with the second one. I don't always go home and shake it off, and I don't. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't. I'm not. I don't become the character and have people call me by the character name and only be on set. I've worked in situations like that. There's a lot of actors I admire. The best example is Daniel Day-Lewis. I did a movie called Frost Nixon where Frank Langella was essentially Nixon for the entire movie. I never spoke to him as Frank. And that's just not the way I work. However, if you really are, what I find is if I'm really committed to something, it kind of permeates your life and your soul, especially since the hours, especially on something like The Following, where our hours were 16, 18 hours a day, and there's a lot of pages, and I'm constantly killing somebody, somebody's killing me, there's a lot of blood. You can't just go home, and I can't turn it off like a tap. So yes, it permeates me, my life, my dreams. I go into a slightly darker space. My family is incredibly understanding about that, and I also have the ability to, and my wife does too, to stop myself, or she can stop me and say, you need to just meditate or just do something that's to get out of this place where you're in. Favorite bands, I guess I would say I kind of go back and forth between the Beatles and the Stones, but I also really adore the band. The kind of music that we play when we put the first record out, I called it Foro Soco, which stands for folk rock soul country, because people are always sort of asking you what kind of category you're in, and if I can think of another Foro Soco band, that would be the band.
Thank you.
Last call. There's a hand right here.
I don't know why. Did you take out student loans?
Good question.
And if so, when did you finally pay them off? And then do you have any advice for the graduating class of 2017?
Are you a student?
No.
No.
I didn't go to college. Yeah.
That's a way to avoid student loans.
It was the way I avoided it. When I got out of high school, there was no part of me that I had my suitcase packed. I was ready to get to New York and start a career. And my parents, you know, I often say that after being the youngest of 6, I'm not sure they even noticed that I left. But they were extremely supportive. There was no part of them that said, "But you need something to fall back on. Why aren't you going to college?" And so I didn't take out student loans. I haven't paid them back because I didn't take them out. And it was also another college question. Oh, what would I say to the graduating class? Well, you know, it's a funny thing because I've been asked to come and speak at graduating classes, and I always turn it down just because I feel like one of the hardest things for me to do, it's strange for an actor, is public speaking. I find it really, really difficult. I've gone to therapy to try to figure out why it is that I have I've meditated on it. I have an app that says, like, this is one of the meditation apps is like, why can't you public speak? Interviews are not so hard, and not as hard for me because it's like kind of an exchange, but to actually make a speech. So the idea of going up and having advice for some students is terrifying to me. And so I don't even know if I can get into it. So I'm sorry to be that's a lousy answer to both those questions.
No, they're good answers. Yeah, thank you. I have 2 questions before we let you go. Because you've been recognizable, basically, since you arrived in New York City, your career took off very quickly. You became famous. Is there a place, can you feel relaxed in public anywhere?
Relaxed in public. Well, you know what it is. I honestly, I don't know exactly what relaxed is exactly. Well, I mean, I know what relaxed is at home, but relaxed in public. When I go out of the house, once I walk out on the other side of that threshold, I'm bobbing and weaving a little bit. I am, always.
And
although I would say that when it comes to celebrity-friendly places, I think most people would be surprised to hear this, but New York is the most celebrity-friendly place in the world, as long as you stay out of Midtown. And now, I don't go to Soho either.
Thank you for coming down.
Yeah. I basically what I'm saying is that New Yorkers, if you're in a place where there are mostly New Yorkers, they're probably going to give you your space. They may say, "Hey Kev, your last movie not too fucking good," but they're not going to. It's not going to be that same thing. It's not going to be selfies and and all that. But relaxed, I don't think so.
And you are famous, among many things, for the prolific career that you have had. I'm curious, when you think about your life at this point, and you look back, what are you proudest?
Career-wise?
Just in like what has been
I'm
the
way proudest of my kids, and I had nothing to do with creating her, but I'm proud of my wife and the work that she's done, and I'm proud of my brothers and sisters and my friends and my pals. Work-wise, I tend to. I'll tell you what I'm proud of. This is specific. It doesn't speak to one actual piece of work. But when I became an actor, my idea about being an actor was that you would embody different kinds of people as many times as possible and as differently as you could each time out of the gate. In other words, you do a part this kind of a guy, and then you do this kind of a guy, and this kind of a guy, and this kind of a guy. That's 100% what I thought an actor was. That was kind of based on one of the first things that I saw when my parents never took me to movies, but I went to the Second Run Theater. There was a theater in downtown Philly. It was $1, and we snuck into. We had to pretend we were old enough to go see Midnight Cowboy. And I looked there and I go, well, they found a cowboy and they found a homeless guy, and that was John Voight and Dustin Hoffman. And there's no part of me that thought to myself, those are actual actors playing parts. And then maybe like the next week or in the same run, they were doing the second run of The Graduate, which was actually made before Midnight Cowboy, but I saw it after Midnight Cowboy. And when I saw The Graduate, I went, that's the same guy. I was like, that is the same. That's that. And I went, whoa, okay, that's what an actor is. It's someone that becomes one guy over here and one guy over here. That's a very, very difficult thing to fight for in this career, because first off, it's not that easy to do. I mean, Meryl Streep is an absolute hero of mine. She does it so amazingly because you really believe she's that woman and that woman and that woman and that woman and all those different people, different socioeconomic, geographical places, Most of us have maybe 2-3 performances that we kind of recycle in different ways. So the thing that I'm proud of is when I do get material sent to me, when offers come in, which they do sometimes they don't. They're not just one kind of guy. Like, I'm not just the comedy guy. I'm not just the action guy. I'm not just the cowboy. I'm not just the doctor. I'm not just the FBI agent. Whatever it is, that's something that I feel a lot of gratitude for, and also something that I've worked really, really hard to have.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Bacon.
Thank you.